Have you ever seen talent being overlooked simply because of where it comes from? I have. I watched as everyone dismissed her, a tiny girl in a worn-out dress, standing up against a world that wasn't ready to hear her voice. But what happened next silenced an entire auditorium. I still remember the first time I saw Lily Parker, a small, skinny 9-year-old with mismatched clothes and shoes that were clearly too big for her tiny feet. She stood at the edge of the prestigious Westbrook Children's Choir audition hall, clutching a wrinkled piece of paper. Her eyes darted nervously across the room filled with children in pressed uniforms and parents with expensive cameras ready to capture their prodigies in action. I was there as a volunteer assistant, helping Maestro Richard Coleman, one of the most respected children's choir directors on the East Coast. His choirs had performed at Carnegie Hall, toured Europe, and even sung for 2 presidents. Getting into his choir wasn't just about singing well, it was a ticket to opportunities most kids could only dream of. The Westbrook Auditorium was gleaming that day. Crystal chandeliers hung from high ceilings. The polished wooden stage shone under professional lighting, and the grand piano sat majestically center stage. Parents chatted about summer homes and private lessons, creating an atmosphere that screamed privilege. And there was Lily, standing alone, no parent in sight, just a little girl with determination in her eyes that seemed much older than her years. "Next up, Lily Parker," I called from my clipboard, trying to maintain the professional demeanor Maestro Coleman expected from his staff. She walked toward the stage, her 2 big shoes making a slight flopping sound against the marble floor. A few parents turned, some children giggled, and I saw Maestro Coleman's eyebrows raise slightly as he assessed her appearance. "And where are your parents, young lady?" he asked, not unkindly, but with the directness he was known for. "They're working, sir. My mom has 2 jobs. She dropped me off during her break," Lily replied, her voice small but steady. Coleman nodded, making a note on his sheet. "And what will you be singing for us today?" "Amazing Grace," she said. "It's what my grandma taught me before she passed." I could see some of the parents exchange glances. Amazing Grace, not the Italian arias or classical pieces the other children had prepared with their private vocal coaches. Maestro Coleman nodded. "Very well. Begin when you're ready." The room fell quiet, that particular silence that feels heavy with expectation and judgment. Lily took a deep breath, closed her eyes, and began to sing. The first note was pure, clear as mountain water. By the second line, parents had stopped checking their phone. By the chorus, everyone in that auditorium was completely still. Her voice wasn't just technically good, it carried something rare. Something that made you feel like you were hearing music for the first time. Raw emotion, delivered with a control that vocalists 3 times her age struggled to master. When she finished, there was a moment of complete silence before the applause started. I looked at Maestro Coleman. In 5 years of working with him, I had never seen him speechless. "Thank you, Lily," he finally said, clearing his throat. "Very impressive. We'll be in touch with the results next week." Lily nodded, gave a small smile, and walked back to her spot against the wall. The spell broke, and the auditions continued. Later that day, when we were reviewing the candidates, there was no question that Lily would be accepted. Her talent was undeniable. But then came the discussion about practicalities. "She's from the East Side District," said Mrs. Winters, the choir's treasurer. "Transportation will be difficult. The commitment is 3 rehearsals a week, performances, travel. Without parental support, her mother works multiple jobs," added Mr. Pearson from the choir fee alone is $2,000 per season, not including uniform, travel, music books, ... I watched Maestro Coleman, usually so decisive, hesitate. "Perhaps we could offer a partial scholarship." "We already have 3 scholarship students this year," Mrs. Winters interjected. "The budget simply can't accommodate more." The conversation continued, and I felt a sinking feeling in my stomach. I had seen it before extraordinary talent passed over, because of practical consideration. The system wasn't designed for girls like Lily. When the final roster was posted the following week, Lily's name wasn't on it. I couldn't stop thinking about her. The way she sang, the way she held herself with dignity, despite being so clearly out of place in that auditorium. So I did something I'd never done before. I tracked down her address through her. application and drove to the East Side district after work. Lily lived in a small apartment complex with peeling paint and security bars on the windows. I knocked on the door and a tired-looking woman answered. She had Lily's eyes. "Mrs. Parker? I'm from the Westbrook Children's Choir. I want to talk to you about Lily's audition." Her face fell. "She didn't get in, did she?" I saw how disappointed she was, but she wouldn't tell me. "May I come in?" The apartment was small but immaculately clean. There were books everywhere, library books stacked on tables and shelves, and on the wall, carefully framed children's artwork and school certificates of achievement. Mrs. Parker worked as a hospital aide during the day and cleaned offices at night. She was raising Lily alone after her husband had left years ago. Despite their circumstances, education was paramount in their household. "Lily has been singing since she could talk," Mrs. Parker told me, her eyes lighting up. Her grandmother was in a gospel choir for 40 years. Taught Lily everything she knew before the cancer took her last year. I explained the situation, that Lily's talent was exceptional, but the logistics made her participation difficult. "I understand, Mrs. Parker said quietly. "It's not the first door that's closed for her, because of our situation, and I'm afraid it won't be the last." I left their apartment with a heavy heart and a determination to do something. The next day I approached Maestro Coleman directly. "I can drive her to and from rehearsals," I offered, "and I'll personally cover her fees." Coleman looked at me for a long moment. "You feel that strongly about this child?" "I do, sir. I believe she has something special, something we don't see very often." He considered this, then nodded slowly. "Make the arrangements." And so Lily joined the Westbrook Children's Choir. I drove her to and from rehearsals and watched as she bloomed. Despite being from a different world than her fellow choristers, her talent quickly earned their respect. She never mentioned the scholarship or the rides, carrying herself with a quiet dignity that made her seem much older than 9. 6 months later, another girl joined the choir, Emma Rothschild, daughter of one of the city's most prominent families. Emma was talented but temperamental, used to being the center of attention. She quickly formed a clique with several other girls from similar backgrounds. I first noticed the problem during a water break. Lily was sitting alone, as she often did, reading a book while the other children chatted. Emma and her friends were nearby, whispering and glancing in Lily's direction. I couldn't hear what was said, but I saw Lily's shoulders stiffen. The incident might have gone unnoticed if not for what happened the following week. The choir was preparing for its spring concert, a major event attended by donors and music critics. Maestro Coleman was auditioning soloists, and both Lily and Emma were among those trying out for the featured part in Schubert's Ave Maria. Emma went first, delivering a technically precise performance. When it was Lily's turn, she stood center stage, took a deep breath, and began to sing. And once again, that magic filled the room. Every person there felt it, that rare quality that separates mere technical skill from true artistry. When she finished, Maestro Coleman simply nodded. We all knew who would get the solo. Later that day, as the children were gathering their things, I overheard Emma speaking to her group of friends, her voice deliberately loud enough to carry. "My father says it's charity cases like her that are bringing down the choir's standards. She probably only got in because they needed to seem diverse for the grants." The other children looked uncomfortable, but none spoke up. Lily stood frozen, her music folder clutched against her chest, her face showing she had heard every word. I was about to intervene when something unexpected happened. A small boy named Trevor, who rarely spoke and usually kept to himself, stepped forward. "That's not true," he said, his voice shaking slightly. "Lily's the best singer here, and everyone knows it." Emma rolled her eyes. "Whatever. My father says—" "Your father isn't the one singing," Trevor interrupted, gaining confidence. "And he wasn't the one who got the solo for the concert, was he?" Emma's face flushed red. "Shut up, Trevor. No one asked you." "Stop it, Emma." Another girl from Emma's own group suddenly spoke up. "You're just jealous because Lily's better than you." The tension in the room was thick. Emma looked around, realizing she was losing her audience. Her face twisted with anger, and she turned to Lily. "At least I don't have to wear second-hand clothes and take charity rides to be here," she spat. "Everyone's just feeling sorry for you because you're poor." The room went silent, Several children gasped. This was a line crossed, even for Emma. Lily, who had remained silent until now, slowly raised her head. I expected tears, but her eyes were dry. She looked directly at Emma. "I'm here because I love to sing," she said quietly, but clearly. "Why are you here, Emma?" Before Emma could respond, Maestro Coleman walked into the room. He had been in the doorway long enough to hear the exchange. "Miss Rothschild," he said, his voice colder than I'd ever heard it. "My office, now." The other children dispersed quickly. I approached Lily, who was still standing there, her face composed but her hands trembling slightly. "Are you okay?" I asked. She nodded. "I'm fine." It's not the first time someone said something like that. Her maturity broke my heart a little. No child should be that used to cruelty. In the days that followed, Emma was noticeably subdued. Whatever Maestro Coleman had said to her seemed to have made an impact. She kept her distance from Lily, but no longer made comments. The choir continued preparing for the spring concert, the incident apparently behind them, until the day of the performance. The Westbrook Spring Concert was the highlight of the choir's season. The auditorium was packed with families, donors, and local music enthusiasts. The first half of the program went flawlessly, building to the finale before intermission Schubert's Ave Maria, featuring Lily's solo. As the choir took their positions, I noticed Lily wasn't there. I quickly checked backstage, the practice rooms, even the bathroom. No sign of her. Emma was watching me, a strange expression on her face. When our eyes met, she quickly looked away. 2 minutes to places, called the stage manager. I pulled Emma aside. "Do you know where Lily is?" She hesitated, then shook her head. "No," but there was something in her eyes. "Emma," I said firmly, "if you know something, tell me now." She bit her lip. I just ... I told her that her shoes looked stupid with the uniform, and that she should change them, or everyone would laugh at her during the solo. "When did you tell her this?" "Just before we lined up." She ran off toward the storage room. I raced to the storage area behind the auditorium, a dimly lit space filled with old props and equipment. There, crouched in a corner, was Lily, sobbing silently. "Lily," I said gently, kneeling beside her. "What happened?" She looked up, her face streaked with tears. "My shoes," she whispered. "I polished them so hard, but Emma said they still looked like charity shoes, and everyone would be staring at them instead of listening to me sing." I looked down at her shoes, the same 2 big ones she'd worn to her audition, now carefully polished but still obviously worn and outdated. "Lily, no one cares about your shoes. They're coming to hear your beautiful voice." She shook her head. "Emma said her father told another parent that I don't belong here, that I'm bringing down the prestige of the choir." The cruelty of it took my breath away. This child, with her extraordinary gift, made to feel she didn't belong because of things completely beyond her control. "Lily, look at me," I said. "I was there the day you auditioned. I saw a room full of privileged people fall completely silent because your voice touched something in them they didn't even know was there. That's what real talent is. Not fancy shoes or expensive lessons or whose daughter you are. It's that thing inside you that no one can give you and no one can take away." She wiped her eyes. "But everyone will be looking at me." "Yes, they will. Because you have something worth looking at. Something worth listening to." The stage manager's voice echoed down the hallway. "Final call. Everyone to places now." "It's your choice," I told her. "But remember, courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about being afraid and doing it anyway." Lily took a deep breath, stood up, and straightened her uniform. Without another word, she walked back toward the stage, her 2 big shoes making that familiar flop-flop sound against the floor. I hurried to my position in the wings just as the choir was assembling on stage. Maestro Coleman glanced at me questioningly, and I nodded to indicate all was well. As the pianist played the introduction, Lily stepped forward for her solo. There was a brief moment barely perceptible to the audience, but I caught it where her confidence seemed to waver. Her eyes scanned the crowd, all those faces looking at her, perhaps at her shoes, perhaps judging her. Then, from the back of the choir, I saw Trevor give her a small thumbs up. Another girl nodded encouragingly, and something shifted in Lily's posture. She stood taller, took a deep breath, and began to sing. What happened in that auditorium is difficult to describe to someone who wasn't there. Her voice soared, pure and perfect, filling every corner of the space with a sound so beautiful it almost hurt to hear it. But it wasn't just technical perfection. It was as if Lily was pouring everything she had experienced, all the hardship and hope and hurt, into every note. By the time she reached the climax of the piece, there were tears streaming down faces throughout the audience. Maestro Coleman, known for his stoic demeanor, was conducting with his eyes glistening. And in the choir behind Lily, even Emma was watching with an expression of awe. When the piece ended, there was that same magical silence I had heard at her audition. That moment when art touches something so deep that applause seems almost inadequate. Then the audience rose to their feet in a standing ovation that seemed to go on forever. At the reception following the concert, Lily was surrounded by people offering congratulations. Music directors from other organizations pressed business cards into Mrs. Parker's hands. A local news reporter asked for an interview. And through it all, Lily maintained the same quiet dignity she had always shown, thanking people politely, deflecting praise with genuine humility. I noticed Emma standing with her parents at the edge of the crowd, watching. After a moment, she separated from them and approached Lily. The room seemed to hold its breath. "You were really good," Emma said simply. Lily looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "Thank you." It wasn't a dramatic reconciliation, but it was an acknowledgement, the beginning of respect. Later that evening, as the crowd was thinning, Maestro Coleman approached me. "You were right about her," he said quietly, watching Lily across the room. "She's special," I agreed. "No," he said, shaking his head. "It's more than that. I've been teaching for 30 years. I've worked with hundreds of talented children, but what she has it can't be taught. It can only be nurtured, or extinguished." He turned to look at me directly. "We almost extinguished it because she didn't fit our idea of what a chorister should be, because it was inconvenient, because the system wasn't designed for children like her." I had never heard Maestro Coleman speak this way. "What are you saying?" I asked. "I'm saying we need to change the system," he replied. "Starting now." The following week, Maestro Coleman called a special meeting of the choir's board. He presented a proposal for a comprehensive scholarship program that would actively seek out talented children from underserved communities. Transportation, uniforms, fees, all would be covered. And most importantly, auditions would now be conducted blind, with judges unable to see the children, only hear their voices. If we had heard Lily without seeing her, without knowing her circumstances, there would have been no discussion, he told the board. We would have accepted her immediately. How many other Lilies have we missed over the years? Because we couldn't see past our own biases. There was resistance, of course. Traditions, budgets, logistics were all cited as reasons why such changes would be difficult. But then Maestro Coleman did something unprecedented. He invited Lily to sing for the board. And once again, that pure, transcendent voice filled the room, silencing all objection. Because in the face of true talent, all other considerations became second. The Westbrook Choir Outreach Program was established that year, with an initial funding pledge from, surprisingly, the Rothschild family. Emma's parents had been deeply moved by Lily's performance and, perhaps, made uncomfortable by their daughter's behavior. Their donation was followed by others, and soon the program was fully funded. As for Lily, her journey was just beginning. The following year, she was invited to perform as a soloist with the City Symphony. At 12, she was accepted to a prestigious art school on a full scholarship. By 15, she was being mentioned by music critics as a once-in-a-generation talent. But what I remember most isn't her success. It's the day of that spring concert, when a little girl in 2 big shoes found the courage to step onto a stage and share her gift with the world, despite every reason to hide it away. I think about Trevor, too, and how one small voice standing up for what's right can inspire others to find their courage. How Emma, despite her initial cruelty, was capable of growth and change when confronted with something greater than herself. And I think about all the other Lilies out there, children with extraordinary gifts who may never get the chance to share them because they were born into circumstances that make it difficult for their talents to be seen and nurtured. Talent doesn't care about zip codes or bank accounts. It doesn't check the label on your clothes or the brand of your shoes before deciding where to take root. It appears wherever it wishes, often in the most unlikely places. It's up to us to make sure it has the chance to bloom. Years later, I attended a concert at Carnegie Hall. Lily, now a young woman, was performing with a world-renowned orchestra. As I watched her on that prestigious stage, poised and confident in the spotlight, I remembered the little girl with the flopping shoes who had been afraid everyone would laugh at her. After the performance, I went backstage to congratulate her. She had grown into her talent beautifully, becoming not just a gifted vocalist but a poised, articulate young woman who used her growing platform to advocate for arts education in underserved communities. "I wouldn't be here without you," she told me, embracing me warmly. "No," I corrected her. "You would have found your way. Talent like yours can't be kept hidden forever." She smiled, then reached down and lifted the hem of her elegant concert gown just slightly, revealing her feet. "Look," she said with a small laugh. She was wearing bright red sneakers, deliberately too big, flopping slightly when she walked. "To remind me where I came from," she explained, "and to remind everyone else that great music can come from anywhere, even from a little girl with the wrong shoes." As I left Carnegie Hall that night, I thought about how a single moment of standing up for someone can ripple outward in ways we never imagine. How Lily's courage had not only changed her own life, but had begun to change the system itself. How Trevor's small act of defending her had sparked others to find their own courage. And I thought about Maestro Coleman, who had been humble enough to recognize his own biases and work to correct them, creating opportunities for countless other children in the process. The greatest talents often come in unexpected packages. Sometimes they wear expensive clothes and arrive with every advantage, but sometimes they show up in too big shoes, carrying wisdom beyond their years in their eyes. The question is, will we have the wisdom to recognize them when they appear? I've carried this story with me for years now. It's a reminder that what we see as obstacles, poverty, lack of connections, not fitting in, are often the very things that forge the deepest art. Lily's voice touched people precisely because it carried within it everything she had experienced, both the hardship and the hope. Her talent wasn't despite her circumstances. In some ways, it was because of them. Today, the Westbrook Choir Outreach Program has spread to cities across the country. Thousands of children who might never have had the opportunity to develop their talents have found their voices, because one little girl refused to be silenced. And somewhere right now, in an apartment with peeling paint, or a neighborhood others avoid, another child is singing, painting, writing, or dancing with a gift that could change the world, if only we have the courage to listen, to look, to recognize what's right in front of us. Talent doesn't discriminate. Neither should we. When I think back to that spring concert years ago, what stays with me isn't just Lily's transcendent performance. It's what happened afterward, when a girl who had everything, Emma, had to confront the reality that all her advantages couldn't give her what Lily had been born with, and how that confrontation eventually led not to bitterness but to growth. Emma and Lily never became close friends, but over time, a mutual respect developed between them. By their final year in the choir together, Emma had become one of the most vocal advocates for the outreach program, using her family's connections to secure additional funding and opportunities. "She taught me something important," Emma told me years later at a choir alumni event, "that there's a difference between being privileged and being special. I had one but thought it meant I deserved the other." As for Trevor, the quiet boy who first stood up for Lily, he went on to become a music teacher in the same East Side district where Lily had grown up. When I asked him why, he said simply, "Because everyone deserves someone who believes in them before they know how to believe in themselves." These are the ripples that spread outward from a single act of courage. A little girl singing despite her fear. A boy standing up for what's right. A prestigious maestro acknowledging his own biases. A privileged girl learning humility and growth. And perhaps that's the most important lesson of all. That talent isn't just about having a beautiful voice or a special gift. It's about what we choose to do with the gifts we have, however large or small they may seem. Lily chose to share her extraordinary voice despite every reason to hide it away. Trevor chose to use his voice to stand up for someone else when it would have been easier to stay silent. Maestro Coleman chose to use his influence to change a system that would have excluded a once-in-a-generation talent. Even Emma eventually chose growth over resentment. Each choice created new possibilities, new paths forward, not just for themselves, but for others who would follow. I sometimes wonder what would have happened if I hadn't driven to Lily's apartment that day, if I hadn't offered to help with transportation and fees. But then I remember what Maestro Coleman said. Talent like hers can't remain hidden forever. Perhaps that's true. Perhaps Lily would have found another path, another choir, another opportunity to share her gift with the world. But I'm grateful I got to be part of her journey. Grateful I got to witness the moment a child found her courage and in doing so helped others find theirs. In a world that often seems designed to keep people in their assigned places, to reward those who already have advantages and ignore those who don't, Lily's story reminds us that the most powerful force for change is often a single voice, whether it's raised in song or raised in defense of what's right. And that sometimes the greatest talents come in the most unexpected package. Wearing shoes that are just a little too big, carrying dreams that are just big enough to change the world. I return to Westbrook sometimes, where Lily's story has become something of a legend. The auditorium where she first sang has been renamed the Lily Parker Hall for Performing Arts. A scholarship in her name provides full funding for children from disadvantaged backgrounds. But perhaps the most meaningful legacy isn't the building or the scholarship, but the change in how talent is perceived and nurtured. Auditions are still conducted blind, with judges unable to see the children. Transportation, uniforms, and other logistical challenges are addressed as a matter of course. And every year, another child who might otherwise have been overlooked is discovered, their gift recognized and nurtured. Because that's how change happens. Not all at once, but one voice, one story, one small act of courage at a time. As I watch the next generation of children find their voices, literally and figuratively, I think about the power we all have to recognize and nurture talent wherever we find it. To look beyond appearances and circumstances, to see the gift that might be hidden beneath. And I think about Lily, who taught me that the most beautiful music often comes from those who have had to fight the hardest to be heard. In the years since that spring concert, I've often reflected on what makes some talent stand out from others. Technical skill can be taught, stage presence can be developed, but that rare quality that Lily possessed, the ability to move people deeply, to make them feel something beyond the notes themselves that can't be manufactured or imitated. It comes from lived experience, from hardship and hope, from falling down and getting back up again, from knowing what it means to have doors closed in your face and finding the courage to knock anyway. Perhaps that's why Lily's voice touched people so deeply. It wasn't just beautiful, it was authentic. It carried within it everything she had experienced, transformed into something transcendent. And that's the paradox at the heart of her story. The very circumstances that could have prevented her talent from being discovered, her poverty, her lack of connections, the system that wasn't designed for children like her, were also what gave her voice its unique power. It makes me wonder how many other gifts remain undiscovered, not in spite of our systems, but because of them. How many voices go unheard, not because they aren't powerful, but because we aren't listening in the right places. Lily's story isn't just about one exceptional child defying the. It's about all of us, our responsibility to create systems that recognize and nurture talent wherever it appears. Our capacity to grow and change when confronted with our own biases, our ability to stand up for what's right, even when it's difficult. And it's about the power of a single voice, whether raised in song or raised in defense of others, to change not just a moment, but an entire system. As Lily herself once said, during a commencement speech at her former arts high school, talent is everywhere. Opportunity is not. It's up to all of us to change that equation. I can't help but think of all the children whose talents might never have been discovered, if not for the changes sparked by one little girl in two big shoes. Children who, like Lily, carried within them gifts that could touch hearts and change minds, if only given the chance to be heard. And I think about how systems change, not usually through grand gestures or sweeping reform, but through individual acts of courage and commitment. through people who see something wrong and decide to do something about it, even in small ways. A volunteer who offers to drive a child to rehearsals, a boy who stands up for a classmate being bullied, a prestigious maestro who acknowledges his own biases and works to correct them, a privileged girl who learns that true worth can't be bought or inherited. These are the threads that, woven together, create the fabric of change. Today, when I hear Lily's voice on the radio or see her name on a marquee, I'm reminded of how close we came to never hearing that voice at all. How easily talent can be overlooked when it doesn't arrive in the package we expect. And I'm reminded of our collective responsibility, not just to recognize talent when it appears in unlikely places, but to create systems where it can flourish, regardless of where it comes from. Because the truth is, talent doesn't care about zip codes or bank accounts or the brand of your shoes. It appears wherever it wishes, often in the most unexpected places and the most unlikely people. It's up to us to make sure it has the chance to be heard. In the end, Lily's story isn't just about music. It's about recognizing the value in each person, regardless of their circumstances. It's about having the courage to share your gifts with the world, even when the world seems determined to ignore them. It's about standing up for others, even when it would be easier to stay silent. And perhaps most importantly, it's about creating a world where talent can be recognized and nurtured wherever it appears, whether in a prestigious concert hall or in a small apartment with peeling paint and books stacked on every surface. Because when we do that, when we create systems that recognize and value every person's potential, regardless of where they come from, we all become richer for it. We all get to hear the music that might otherwise have remained silent. And isn't that, after all, what we're here for? To help each other's voices be heard, to recognize the gift in each person we meet, to create a world where talent like Lily's voice can soar. So the next time you see a child in shoes that are too big or clothes that don't quite fit, remember Lily. Remember that appearance tells you nothing about the gifts that might be hidden inside. Remember that courage often comes in small packages, and that standing up for someone else's voice is one of the most powerful things any of us can do. Because you never know, that child might have a voice that could change the world, if only we have the wisdom to listen. Take a deep breath and hit that like button if this story touched you. Subscribe to not miss more stories of invisible triumph like Lily's. Comment below what part moved you most. Share with someone who needs to hear that talent can bloom anywhere, even in the most unlikely places.